Essential Conveyors. Hello and welcome to the Essential Conveyors webinar with CET Material Handling. With the Essential Conveyors Extension, you are going to be able to quickly visualize and streamline your conveyor space planning. Essential Conveyors is a material handling extension, and it is available for everyone to download from the marketplace. Today, we are going to be looking at the following features within Essential Conveyors: settings, catalogs, and schemes. We'll take a look at the types of conveyors and how we can bring them in and how we can work with them. Then we'll look at the other tools available within the extension. First things first, you're going to need to download the extension to be able to use it. You can find the Essential Conveyors extension in the Marketplace. In CET, click the Marketplace button. That is going to take you to the Marketplace. Next, you're going to want to select the CET Material Handling version of the Marketplace. Essential Conveyors is available in this first section of blue icons. These blue icons are essential extensions. This first one is Conveyors. Click Install here, and then CET will install that for you. In CET, on the top of the window, it will now say Downloading and Installing. Once that is complete, you will get a beige banner up on the top that says that there is a restart needed. You can actually update and restart as soon as you get that notification, or restart when it's most convenient for you. After you restart, you will have the extension available for you to use in your Component tab area. The Essential Conveyors tab looks like a little conveyor with a parcel rolling along on it. This is what the extension looks like. Let's go ahead and start taking a look at what's included in this extension. The first section in our extension is Settings. This settings option is actually going to allow you to choose the materials that you would like to be handled. If you click this drop down, you can pick what kind of materials you'd like to be handling. You are able to choose more than one type, allowing you to choose a mix of those materials as well. You can adjust the ratios as well. You can set this up however you would like. If there's a custom size material that you would like to include, you can absolutely do that. The drop-down list in the Materials to be Handled dialog is actually linked to the Unit Load Editor in the Essential Pallet Racking extension. In the Pallet Racking extension, you can go to the Unit Load Editor. Next, come up here and create a custom carton or other type of unit here. Then you can actually use that within your conveyor materials to be handled. Once you have your materials to be handled selected, you can actually set that as your default. Maybe for this example, we want our nestable totes to be our default. We can actually select Set as Default. Once you have some conveyors in your drawing, if you'd like to choose different materials throughout your system, you can actually make a selection and then apply those materials to be handled to a specific selection. This dropper tool will allow you to see what materials are being handled in a specific section. If you applied some materials to be handled to a part of your conveyor system, you can then use this dropper, and it will show you the specific materials to be handled mix in the tooltip. Coming down to the next section in the Essential Conveyors extension, we have our catalogs. This is going to be where you can adjust the pricing for all of the parts and components for your conveyor systems. First thing you want to do is use the drop-down and select what type of measurement you would like to use. I'm going to go ahead and keep it on the imperial for this demonstration. Next, I will click on the Pricing button. That is going to open up this Price List dialog window. What this will do is it will allow me to either open a price list that I have already adjusted, or I can click this Excel button, and that's going to create a default file. If this is your first time using Essential Conveyors, you can go ahead and click the Excel button, and it's going to open up an Excel file for you. When the file opens, this first tab has instructions, and then there is information throughout the other tabs as well. To customize pricing, you're going to come to the Price List tab and then find the parts and pieces that you would like to add pricing to, and then add the price in the last column. Now again, the instructions for how to use this Excel sheet are all on that first tab, so be sure to review that. This can be a bit of a challenging part of this extension, but it allows you to customize all of your pricing to your specific needs, which can be extremely important when quoting projects. Once you have that Excel file updated and saved, you can actually load it in. I'm going to load one that I have that's been filled out already with arbitrary pricing for demonstration purposes. Now, this is the price list that I have entered. You'll see I just went from having a 0 in my calculations price preview to this new price, and that is based on the pricing within the Excel sheet I just loaded. I will demonstrate once more. I'm going to remove that selected price list. Now I've got a price of 0. I still have all of my line items. All of the things that are currently in my drawing are still displayed in my main article view, but they have no pricing associated. But when I add that price list, you can see that it automatically updates the price for me. Now each of these items has a price associated, and then it calculates out all of my totals based on that price. The next section is going to be for the scheme. Schemes are a really powerful tool that are available in the Essential Conveyors Extension. A scheme is going to allow you to change all of the materials applied to your conveyor line. Not materials to be handled, but actual graphical materials, so the color of all of your components. Schemes can be applied universally throughout the drawing, or can be limited to specific selections in your drawing, such as categories, part tags, or whatever you have selected in your drawing. If I click on the drop-down in the Scheme section, it will show me all of the different schemes that I already have saved. You may just have a default here. If you click on the little rainbow bubble next to the drop-down, that will open up your Scheme dialog window. In the Scheme dialog window, you've got a horizontal string of tabs up on the top. You may only have one if you haven't saved any schemes before. This first one may say Default, or it may say Essential Conveyors. It's going to list all of your default materials in the center portion of the window. You can change and customize all of these materials, so when you bring conveyors into your drawing, they will have those specific materials applied. For example, I have got two different schemes here, because I have my default scheme as well as a different one that is already set up. I'm going to select this one. Then I'm going to apply it to what's already existing in my drawing. Now while this is thinking, I'll go ahead and show you a little bit more in this window. This Auto Emb toggle tool makes it so if you close this drawing, you save the drawing and then you share it with someone. When they open the drawing, they're actually going to be able to see the scheme that you used. They'll be able to see all of this information. If you don't auto embed the scheme and you unlink it, and that's going to be with this little chain link here, if you toggle that on or off, it will either be included with the drawing or not. It is good practice to auto embed that. That way, if somebody else needs to do something within the drawing, they are able to do so. Here is that second scheme that I've set up. I just clicked that New Scheme button. I gave it a name and then I applied some different materials. With that different scheme selected, I can go to the bottom of the Scheme dialog window and select Apply to All. That will apply the selected scheme to everything within my drawing. If you click New, it will create a new tab and it will give you the option to rename. Then, if you click on the ellipse next to whichever group of items you would like to change, you can actually pick the color. For this demonstration, I will pick something else here. Maybe I want to use this brown and I will also do something for the side channels that we'll be able to see quickly. Let's do a red. Now if we apply that, you'll see that all of those materials have changed again. If you have different schemes that you would like to use, maybe you have a specific customer that always wants to have things a certain color, you can set up a custom scheme for that. If you want to show your company specific colors, you can make those selections and save them as a scheme. I've got our Configura colors here. Once you have a scheme set up, you can actually save these. You can come over here to this More category. When saving schemes, they're going to be a .cem scheme, and that's going to be saved in your CET documents. That is where all of your reusable files live. There will be a schemes folder, and then you can actually have your folder with your scheme in it. Once you set up a scheme, you can actually share that file. If I wanted to email this to a coworker, they would have that scheme available for use later on. This is a really nice feature to use. Again, this is a really quick way to update all of the materials that are being applied to your conveyor line. Once you have made all your changes, you can close out of our scheme editor. The next thing that we are going to talk about is going to be the types of conveyors. We're getting down into our conveyors now. We do have a couple different types of conveyors available. The first section is going to be the transportation conveyors. These are all going to be driven units that require power to move a load. I'm going to bring a couple in, and we're going to talk about some of the properties within these conveyors. If you hover over the different conveyor options, you can see what they are on the tooltip. If we wanted an incline, a decline, a camel, etc., we've got all of these different options for transportation conveyors. We've also got these spirals as well. Let's go ahead and start with a straight belt-driven roller unit. To bring the conveyor into my drawing, I'm going to left-click on it once, and that's going to put it on my cursor. Then I can bring it into my drawing and left-click again. That will place it into my drawing. I will still have that tool on my cursor, so I can continue placing these units, or I can stop that command by either pressing Escape on my keyboard, or I can flick off to the left side of my screen to remove that from my cursor. Here is the conveyor. One thing to note here is the last scheme that I had active, meaning the last tab that I had selected when my scheme dialog was open was the Conveyor Webinar tab. When I bring things in, they're going to be that color. If I wanted to change that, I could pick from this dropdown and it would adjust for me. So right now, they're all going to come in at this Conveyor Webinar color. Once we have a conveyor placed in the drawing, there are a few ways that we can work with it. The first way is by using the stretch nodes. You'll have stretch nodes at either end of your conveyor units. If you left-click and grab that, and then hold your left-click down, you can actually drag it to make it the length that you need. Now the little box in the center, that is actually going to be where the drive is for these transportation units. You can change the location of that drive with this center stretch node. You can actually position it wherever you would like. You can also rotate your conveyor by left-clicking and holding on the edge stretch nodes that will allow you to rotate around. There are also properties for each of these. As you are bringing them in, you will find all of these different properties available to customize your conveyor units. Whichever drawing view you are working in, that is where your Quick Properties window will be displayed. Right now, I'm in 3D view, so my properties will show up in my 3D view. If I select this conveyor in my 2D view, the properties will show up in my 2D view. These properties are going to apply to whichever conveyor you have selected. Let's talk about properties. The first option available is the name. You can give the unit a specific name if you would like. Maybe you have receiving 01, receiving 02, etc. if you give it a name that will be displayed in the conveyor's view mode. When we come into our conveyor view mode at the bottom of the screen, we now have that name showing in our 2D view. I'm going to flip back to my normal view mode and select the conveyor again to go back into those properties. The next dropdown is going to be Part. This allows you to select from some different parts that are similar. If you wanted to change this instead to a gravity unit instead of a driven unit, you could do that. You can choose any of these different options. Next will be the speed. This is listed in feet per minute. You can choose the speed of the material here. The next line is going to be the length of the conveyor, and I will talk about that a little more when we get to the conveyor 2D length property. Continuing on, there is a BF property. This is the between frame distance. We can actually choose the BF property using the dropdown, and you'll see that it changes the width of our conveyor in real time. If I select 60, I will have a very wide conveyor. If I drop it all the way down to a 16, it's quite narrow. You can adjust that property as needed. To be clear, that is going to be this distance between the frame from this inner portion to this other side, inner portion. Whenever you see that BF property, that is the measurement there. It's not your total width, it's the between frame width. Alright, the next property is the side channel. The side channel is going to be what's along the edges of your conveyors. You have some options for this side channel. You can either have a box, which is a solid, you can have a C, or you can have a C with a cover. Now, as you saw in my schemes, I can actually change those to be different colors if I would want. I have the option to change that cover material as well, to make that whatever color I would like that to be. The next property that we have for these units is going to be the roller pitch. This is actually going to change the distance between the rollers, so you can adjust that here. Next is handedness. You can choose whether this is a right-hand or left-hand conveyor. That is going to be where that drive is going to be sticking out. It's going to be either pushed out on the left-hand side or the right-hand side. You'll see it's swapping here as I toggle. I do have an option to change the drive location here in the properties as well. I can change it to the charge end, the discharge end, or we can center it. If you need to make it a custom position, you can use that stretch node in the center. Next is the elevation. The elevation is going to be from the ground to the top of the rollers. Whatever the elevation of the top of the rollers is, that is what the elevation is measuring to. If I change this to a 3-foot elevation, you can see that that has moved up. If I go back, it is now back at that 2 foot 5 inches. The next property is the conveyor 2D length. Because this is a straight conveyor, it's going to be the same as the regular length. We are going to look at this more in just a moment with our incline units, but the conveyor 2D length on an incline or decline will be a little bit different from the actual length. That is because there's going to be a difference in the actual distance that the material will be traveling versus a straight conveyor. The last property we have here is this discharge elevation. If we wanted the discharge end to be lower or higher to create an incline or decline here, we would enter that value and the conveyor would be updated. For example, if we set this discharge elevation to 3 feet, you can see that is now at an incline. Alright, that covers some of the basic properties. When you start looking at some of these other conveyor options within the transportation section, you will see that you have some other properties available. If I bring in a different conveyor unit, you'll see that these are going to snap to each other. I can actually hover in my 2D drawing view or my 3D drawing view near one of the ends of the existing conveyor. The new conveyor will want to snap onto the existing one for me. You can see that there is a directional arrow on my 2D drawing view based on whichever side I decide to snap this new conveyor to. This is a quick and easy way for me to tell which way the material will be going. Depending on which end I snap it to, it will adjust itself. Here it's snapping to the discharge end, and here it's snapping to the charge end. Left click wants to place that in the drawing. This conveyor unit is going to remain on my cursor, so I can continue to place more of the same type of unit if I would like to, or I can swipe off to the left to remove it from my cursor. Next, let's look at the properties of this belted unit that was just placed. There are some new things that I can adjust within those properties. For these belted units, you have the option to make them a roller or a slider bed type. If I select a slider, it's just going to be a solid piece underneath the belt versus the roller bed type where there are rollers under the belt. I can also adjust the belt type on these units. I can specify a plastic belt, which is showing here. Or I can select a belt with rollers. The rest of these options are going to remain the same as the first conveyor. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at one of these inclines. This is going to be a belted unit. I'm going to just go ahead and snap it to the end of my line here. Then I'm going to swipe to the left to free up my cursor. The incline unit is now in the drawing. These incline, decline, and camel units have options for end elevations for each of their zones. This is going to determine the elevation at the discharge end of each of those zones. Looking at the unit in 2D, this is broken into zones and it's shown here. We've got the first zone, the second zone, and then our third zone. It's a little bit easier to tell in 3D. You can see where that angle is. This flat part is the first zone, then the actual incline is the second zone, and the last flat part is our third zone. If I wanted to adjust any of this, I could by entering different values in the Quick Properties box. For example, if I wanted this unit to be a little lower, I would click into this box and give it a different value. When I change that end elevation zone to 5 feet, you can see it's much smaller of an incline and is now a lower elevation than it was before. You can also adjust the drive location for these units. You can make the selection that makes the most sense for your setup. Once it's there, you can use the center yellow stretch node to move it around for more precise placement. Next, I will bring in one of these curved units. If I wanted to bring in a belted curve unit, I could. I can also bring in a roller curve unit as well. For this example, let's look at this roller unit. I will go ahead and add it to the end of my line here. Now I'm going to take a peek at the properties. With the curved units, you can change the angle of the curve. Now, one thing to keep in mind here, you can see that the whole rest of my conveyor line has moved when I adjusted the angle. If you know that you are going to need a specific angle, it is good to make those changes before you actually connect them. For example, I can bring a curved unit in, change the properties, then connect it to the rest of my line. To show this, I'm going to disconnect this one, and I'm going to set back into a 90-degree curve angle so I can demonstrate some of these other properties. Now remember, you can grab the stretch nodes to rotate the units around if you'd like to work with it in a different position. You can also change the charge and discharge tangent. To do that, I can just toggle through these tangent options. You'll see it's going to add a little bit of a straight section of rollers before the end of the unit. Instead of going directly into that curve, there is some straight conveyance before the actual curve. These tangent options are available for both the charge and discharge end. Another property toggle for the curved units is for handedness. The rest of the properties are the same as the other conveyors that we've already looked at. After adjusting your properties, I can left-click on the unit and drag it over near my line, and it will snap together. The next types of transportation conveyors I'm going to look at are the takeaways and merges. Takeaways are going to come off the line. After bringing them into the drawing space, they can snap to a line. The merges are going to be similar, but they come onto the line. The directional arrows in the 2D drawing view help to see what's going on. If I select this first takeaway, the first property we haven't seen yet is wedge angle. I can adjust that angle by using the drop down. Keep in mind that if the angle changes while attached to a line, it will change the placement of your entire line. So be sure that you disconnect it with the triangle disconnect node first. Then the angle can be adjusted and the unit can be reconnected without moving the rest of the line. These units also have the part dropdown, which include a takeaway that's a gravity, a belt-driven transportation takeaway, and the belted unit. If I select that belt-driven option, it's all going to update based on those selected properties. The rest of the options available on will be the same. If I select the merge unit, you can see these are the same properties available. These units are going to work the exact same way as the takeaway units. Moving right along, the next types of units are these transportation spirals. When I bring a spiral in, there are some things that I want to specify before I actually connect it to the line. The first things are going to be the type and the direction. Right now, I have this unit set to go up. If I add this in, I can see that the 2D arrow is coming around this way, and it's discharging off to the right. I could snap that to my line right now if that was the selection I wanted. However, this type dropdown has options to change how the spiral is turning, whether it is clockwise or counterclockwise, as well as the angle of rotation for the actual material. If the material is going to continue on after the spiral with no rotation from the way it started, it's going to be the top option 0. But if I select a 180, meaning the material is going to actually spin and come back the other way, that is when I would choose the 180-degree option. For this example, I will select that 180-degree and elevate clockwise. Viewing this in the 3D view got an elevation clockwise here. The material will be going up, and then when it comes off the spiral, it will be coming back this way. Next, I'll walk through a few other options that we have available for the spirals. First is the number of revolutions. If you wanted to adjust that, you could. Maybe you wanted it to be a little bit more of a severe incline. You could adjust the number of revolutions there. The next thing is the post diameter. That's going to be the diameter of your actual post in the center of the spiral. Then there is the post gap. That's the difference between where your post is and where your side channel is. If you adjust this property to 0, that will remove that inner side channel entirely. The top elevation is going to be based on the other parameters that have been specified for the spiral, but you can actually enter in other specific values if you have a height that you would like it to be. Same thing is true for the bottom elevation. Top straight length is the conveyor length before it actually begins its spiral. The bottom straight length is same thing, just on the bottom. Side channel height is how tall the side channel actually is. The side channel DZ is the difference in the z-axis, meaning the actual location of this side channel. Right now, if I have a 12-inch side channel and I've got a 6-inch channel DZ, that's actually going to put the side channel right in the center. Entering half the value of the side channel height as the side channel DZ value will result in the side channel being centered on the conveyor bed. For example, if I select a 12-inch DZ, you'll see that side channel starts at the conveyor bed, then goes 12 inches below. If I change the DZ to 0, the side channels start at the bed, then go up 12 inches. This property is just changing the z-axis location of the side channel. If I enter in half the value of my side channel height, so 6 inches, it will center the side channels on the belt. Next is the top straight and bottom straight DZs. To demonstrate, I can enter a different value in the properties box, and you can see that this section is now an incline instead of flat. If I make it a little bit more extreme, so now you can see that change in the z-axis. A value of 0 here is going to result in a flat section. That wraps up the main properties for the spirals. The next conveyor units that we have are the accumulation units. These are going to allow the material to accumulate at a specified rate. I can bring this unit into the drawing space and snap it here. I'm going to spin my 3D view around so it lines up with my 2D, and now you can see all of the different zones on this unit. They are indicated with this line that doesn't quite go all the way through. This would be a zone, this would be another zone, and so on. We can actually change how long we want the zone lengths to be. That is a unique property for the accumulation units. The belted accumulation units are going to be similar. There is the option to select a zone length and adjust other properties as needed. This last accumulation unit is going to have the same properties, it just does not have the drive. Earlier I did mention that the length is going to be different if you have an incline unit. Let me go ahead and demonstrate how that works. I will bring a camel belted unit into the drawing. This is the default belted camel unit. The 2D length of the unit is this 460 inches. If I measure this in 2D, it's going to be that 460 inches long. However, the actual belt length needed here is going to be different. There is a greater distance to travel because of the incline and decline. The first length property is going to be the actual length of the belt, so the distance that the material is going to travel to go along that conveyor. Next are the gravity units. These are pretty straightforward. They are non-driven units, and they depend on the force of gravity to move products. After placing these units in the drawing, I can stretch them to whatever size I need them to be. I can use the drop-down to change the unit to a similar part if I would like to do that. The rest of the properties should look pretty familiar, but the bed type has some unique options for the gravity units. They can be roller, skate wheel, or ball top. Next, there are curves, and there are takeaways and merges as well, and then there are also chute spirals. These spirals are going to be either using a roller type or by making a chute. For example, if I bring in a chute, you can see that it's basically like a big slide. The chute spiral does have a unique option. I can change the bend height. The bend height is the top of the radius of the corner. If I make the bend height different, maybe I have a 6-inch bend height, now the top of that radius has changed, and you can see that this chute has become much more concave. Next are the specialty units. The one that I do want to really point out here is this expanding unit. After it has been placed in the drawing, I can left-click and hold the stretch node, and that lets me bend it around to wherever you would like it to be. If I need a specific curve or a specific placement, I can adjust to suit that. I can also have it expanded open or closed to whatever point I need it to be to show. I can change the length as well, so if I wanted a longer version of this unit, I could adjust it here. In addition to those other options, there are some bed type properties that I could change as well. The other specialty units in this section are the gappers, brake belts, and brake meters. Those units all have a drive direction property. That will allow you to position the drive just like those other driven units. Next, let's look at the telescopic conveyor. These units also have a unique property, and that is the bed count. Bed count is going to reflect how many different expansions I can do with this unit. As I pull this out by left-clicking and dragging the stretch node, you'll see that this telescoping conveyor can move. If I choose to have 3 beds, you'll see that it's smaller here, and that will change the amount that we can telescope this out. For the other specialty units, the only unique properties here are going to be if you have a need to change the position of your drive, you can actually make these positioned differently. You can choose to have them be pointing up, pointing down, or to have them horizontal with the line. The next section of conveyors are transfer units and sortation units. One thing to keep in mind here is that several of these units need to be added to the bed of another conveyor that has been previously placed. The narrow belt, roller divert, and narrow steerable wheel divert all need to be added on to a narrow belt unit. Instead of being snapped to the outside of a line or snapping to the end of a line, these units are actually going to snap right into an existing unit. Next is the right angle transfers. These are pusher units. I can snap this onto a line where I want to push material off. These pusher arms have a state bar in the quick properties box. If you ever see a state slider bar, know that it is going to just adjust the graphical representation of where the symbol is so you can show fully extended or retracted. The arms in this section are going to snap on to the edge of a conveyor. Those have the state slider as well. I can show them as being open, so horizontal with the unit, or I can have it be shown as diverting material across the unit. In the next section, there are lifts available to add to the drawing. The lifts have some special properties, and these are meant to transport product between multiple levels. Then the next section in the Essential Conveyor Extension is support. We've got 3 different types of support available here. I'm going to pull up the help article for some good images of what the support looks like. This hanging support can be added to a line, and it looks like this. You've got these rods that come down, and they will connect underneath a line. The next option is the regular floor support. We can actually place this wherever we'd like along the conveyor. This next one is a multi-level. Back on that help article, you can see that there are 2 conveyors, one over another, creating this multi-level. With these supports, there is a bar that goes across underneath each level to support each part of that line. Now the one that I really want to show you here is this auto tool. Let's look at this first line. I'm going to go ahead and select this whole line. To do that, I'm going to make sure that I'm in group select mode, so I can toggle by pressing S on my keyboard. That puts me in either single or group select mode. In group select mode, I've got this cold outline, and it's selecting everything on my line. Now I can click this auto button. You can see that it has added supports throughout my entire line for me. The next section in the extension is guarding. I can left-click on this tool and then hover over any part of your conveyor system and apply guarding wherever I would like. There are a couple different kinds. There is a pan guard and then also a guard rail. Now the guard rail has some different options. I can choose how many rails I would like on there, and I can choose the height. There is also an auto guarding tool. Same thing as the auto supports. I'm going to go ahead and select this whole line, and then I can click the auto button. That will open the auto side guarding dialog window. I will select the properties that I would like. The buttons down at the bottom are going to let me apply the rail. I can either remove all of the side guards on the selection if there were already existing guards. I could apply guarding to one side of the line or the other, or I could apply guarding to both sides. I'm going to go ahead and apply to both sides. Now you can see the guarding has been applied to my whole system now. I can close out of that dialog window when finished. The next section is chute. I can add these units onto the side of the conveyor line. I can just add this chute, and then I can select the properties of that chute as well. If I wanted to make this have a higher or lower discharge, I could specify that value. There are a couple other tools available in the Essential Conveyors extension. First is the conveyor name animation. This is going to allow me to name my conveyor units. If I choose this line selection, it is going to apply a name to the entire line for me. I can make an individual selection as well if needed. For this demonstration, I do want to use Apply to Line. I can choose how many numbers I would like to increment the names by. I will start with 0, 0 here, then increment by 10. I'm going to apply this to the line. After naming the conveyor units, when I select the conveyor view mode, in the 2D view, I can see those numbers that were applied. That is a nice way to quickly apply names instead of having to adjust names individually for each part. The Polyline Insert tool helps me to quickly place a conveyor system. Using the quick properties, I can choose what type of conveyor units we would like to use to create this. To use this tool, I'll start by left-clicking once in my drawing space. Then I can choose which direction I would like it to go. Then I can choose if I want a straight or a curved unit. When I get close to finishing, I can either hover close to the end, and that will automatically generate a path for me. Or I can click Insert, and it will insert conveyors along the path I've created. When I hover near the beginning of the line, CET is going to default select the close option in the quick properties. Left-click one more time, and it will create conveyors all along that line for me. Next up is the point-to-point insert tool. I'm going left-click once to activate that tool. I'm going to left-click again in my drawing to anchor it, and now I'm going to choose which direction I would like it to go. This is great if you have something specific in your drawing that you know you need to build around, and you just want to quickly create a path in between those 2 points. Now the line coming off the dot is the direction of the material after that point. Maybe I have some columns that I need to go around. I will left-click one more time with this direction. I now have all of these different placement options, so I can choose which type of angle we would like to have. I'm going to left-click to select the option I want. Then it gives me all of these position options at that specified angle. Left-click one last time, and that will generate that conveyor line for me. The next tool is the Skew Conveyor Roller Bed. Left-click once to activate that. I can choose to either have it skewed left, we're going to have it skew right, or we can give it a herringbone skew. Whichever way I would like to apply this, I can. If I would like to remove this skew from a line, I can just click this None and apply None. Next, we have the elevation tool. This is going to be pretty similar to all of our other elevation tools in our other essential offerings. We can actually draw a rectangle around whatever units we would like to have the elevation of by left-clicking in the 2D drawing space to anchor the rectangle, then moving the cursor to determine the width. When the elevation is placed, I will swipe left to free up my cursor. I can double-click on the elevation symbol in the drawing that looks like a circle with a triangle. It's going to open the elevation view dialog window. I can do all kinds of different customization here, including applying dimensions, snipping this to my paper view, adding annotations, and adding text with a leader line. The next tool available is Spot Elevation. This is going to allow you to see what the elevation is at any point along your conveyor line. I can actually see this in my 2D view and my 3D view. I'll demonstrate with this incline unit. As I move up this incline, my elevation is changing. The elevations will show in the 2D drawing view and the 3D drawing view as well. One thing to keep in mind is that the elevations will not show up in a Photolab render, but your 2D versions will, so you can easily call out an elevation at a specific point on the line. The last 2 tools that we have are in the Spiff Up section. First is this conveyor decal. We can click on this one, and that is going to allow me to place a decal on my conveyor line. If I zoom in, I can actually see where this is going to be placed on the conveyor. Then I can left click where we want the decal, and now that decal has been added. If I would like to adjust what that decal is, I can actually double click on the decal. That will open up a file explorer. From here, I will choose whichever logo or design I would like to add. The last tool is this flow arrow. This is a really cool tool. As I hover over my line, you can see the direction of flow, and this arrow will snap to a line in either 2D or in 3D. This is really good to see in 3D. At this point, I'm going to go back into my normal view. I'm still in that conveyor view showing all my names. I don't need to see those right now. Now I'm in my normal view, and here is that directional flow arrow. As I come around my line, you can see I can place this anywhere along the conveyors. I have all kinds of different options for this tool, as well by using the Quick Properties box. I can choose to fill it in my 2D mode. I could also choose what color I wanted that to be. Maybe for this example, I want it to be red. Now it will show up as red. I can choose to add text to it if I would like, or I could choose whether or not to fill it in my 3D view. Lastly, I can change the size of the text and the color of the text here as well. This is a great tool to give that visual representation of the direction of flow. There we have it. That is the Essential Conveyor Extension. Feel free to reach out to the chat support or training at configure.com if you have any questions. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video.